Well, for more on our top story, the situation in Syria, I spoke to Dr. Andreas Krieg, Assistant Professor at the Defence Studies Department of King's College London. I asked him what he thought about the effectiveness of the airstrikes.
This operation was very bounded in time, in scale, and that's why very quickly Trump was saying this is mission accomplished, because the targets were hit, but because the objectives that were supposed to be achieved were very limited. Now, the facilities were hit, but I'm pretty sure, and most analysts are pretty sure as well, that there are still stockpiles of chemical weapons in the country that are accessible by the regime and can possibly be used by the regime, also because the Air Force, even if it's just helicopters, are still somewhat operational. And I think, so it's not the last time that we see him use it, also because I think the airstrikes will not deny him the ability to do so, and the question is whether he will be deterred to do so. And even if he's deterred for the time being, what's going to happen a couple of months further down the line? Will he use chemical weapons again? Question mark, because I think deterrence is very limited. And that's, I think, the key here. This was an act of compellence. We're trying to compel Assad, telling him, don't do that again or else. And if you do it again, we're going to punish you again. And this is like, it's a tit for tat kind of game that's been going on for years and years. And now finally the Trump administration said this enough is enough, and we're going to strike you.
And you said yourself there, question mark at the end of it, which unfortunately I'm going to put to you, because there was wiggle room certainly out of Washington initially. Firstly saying this is a one-off strike, and then secondly saying we're locked and loaded and ready to go. Do you think the Assad regime will say, well, OK, this has happened, this is a lie, and we know now what the response will be? We will be less likely to use it again if indeed they did use it first time. Well,
important here is also Russia, and you alluded already to the fact that the Americans have now new sanctions in place to compel the Russian regime as well to basically loosen its support for the Assad regime, or at least return to the negotiation table. But the problem here is that all three Western countries that were involved in the strikes yesterday don't have that leverage anymore that they might have had in 2013 when the Obama administration was thinking to strike for the first time. Today it's Iran, it's Russia. They're very much bogged down. They're very well established in Russia, and in Syria, and they're calling the shots. So the Americans are now trying to get back into the game, trying to exercise some leverage here. It's very questionable whether the Assad regime will respond to this, also because if the problem is always deniability, and there's still deniability with that strike. Even if we have people on the ground, even if there is proof, there's never going to be 100% proof that that chemical weapons were actually used.
You used this phrase that Donald Trump said in a tweet, mission accomplished. If you were Donald Trump and you had just carried out this course of action, would you use that phrase, mission accomplished?
Well, it's a very, very value-loaded phrase to be used after the very infamous speech that Bush Jr. gave in 2003 aboard that aircraft carrier. It is mission accomplished because the mission that the West has set itself in Syria is very limited. They said from the onset, this is not an intervention in the civil war. So we're not trying to solve the civil war here. We're trying to intervene whenever our very existential national interests are being concerned, or our values. And I think this is what this operation was all about. It was all about the value of the use of chemical weapons, or non-use of chemical weapons, and we punished him for it. In terms of interest, though, the West has a whole range of different interests in Syria. One is the containment of jihadism or terrorism. The second one is definitely migration, which is very concerning for the Europeans. And the third one is somewhat Iran, particularly for the new Trump administration. And this is where they will get involved for. Unfortunately, and that's something we have to put into perspective here, we're not saying we're here to protect the civilian people from the onslaught of the Bashar al-Assad regime. We're here to protect them from chemical weapons only. So we give him a whole range of different sources to use against his own people.
The analysis there of Dr. Andreas Krieg. Next, former US First Lady Barbara Bush is said